Hello, MGTOW. Hello, man. This is Howard Dare. Thanks for stopping by. So, I want to talk about overcoming fear, anxiety, doubt, because I can feel the conflict within people. I know of the conflict within myself. The outward appearance, the behavior of a person versus the internal state, the conversation going on within their mind. How are you? Fine. How are you? But is that how you really are? No. And is that what they're really asking? No. So, what's the source of this conflict? And how can we overcome this internal fear, doubt that's so crippling and so pervasive? Doesn't it feel like if you could just let go of your fear, your doubt, your anxieties, that everything would be okay? That you could just work effectively throughout the day, get things done, interact with people, and be healthy and be productive? I'm sure it does, because that's the natural state that a person needs to get to. So what's the source? Let me put it to you this way. Do you remember a time in your life, I'm sorry, when you didn't feel this fear, this doubt, this anxiety, this conflict, this uncertainty, this language policing within your own mind, this pervasive feeling that you're doing something wrong? Can you remember a time in your life when you didn't feel this? The older you are, probably the longer we have to wait, right? And the further you have to go back. So what's the source? Is it just this idea that, oh, now you're an adult? Oh, so now you've got to act like this? Right? Like, oh, the last time you felt that way was when you were 10 years old, okay? When you didn't have bills and responsibilities. This is the way people say it. So is that the source? That you suddenly got bills and responsibilities? That's not the source of fear, anxiety, doubt, crippling suspicion. That's not the source. I was talking about the idea of conspiracies in one of my other videos. All the rivers lead to the ocean, okay? It's not a conspiracy, but all the rivers, lead to the ocean. So there doesn't have to be some big, giant, vast conspiracy in place for there to be some big, giant, vast conspiracy, or rather some big, giant, vast system in place that works in a particular way. So, it would seem like a big, giant conspiracy. So maybe I'm just talking about myself here, but having responsibilities is not the source of suspicion, fear, doubt, conflict, hatred. That's not it. Now, some of these feelings are perfectly justified. If your car breaks down in a really bad neighborhood and it's the middle of the night, yeah, you would be wise to be nervous and worried and suspicious a little bit. Right? You still got to do what you have to do, but if it becomes crippling, so what's the difference between a normal, healthy amount of suspicion, doubt, caution, awareness of your environment versus too much, versus being overwhelmed by these feelings and being disabled and stifled and crippled by these feelings? What's the difference? Where's that balance? Now, the justified caution, fear, and doubt, we want that. We need that. We have to have that. It's a good, smart, healthy thing to have, but only in the appropriate circumstances. You know what I mean? It's kind of like here we are interacting in this cultural, civilized setting, and some of us still have our fight or flight response still triggering. And when this happens, the cortisol levels are always sky high, right? So this is going to destroy the adrenal glands, and this is going to destroy the kidneys. They're not going to be able to do their job because they're overworked, because the person is in a constant state of panic and fear, even though if you say to them, how are you doing? They're going to say, fine, I'm doing great. How are you? And you're going to think, wow, that person's pretty cool. But internally, it could be something completely different. And it's just destroying people. And some of it is perfectly justified. Some of it is completely, neurotic, completely. It's just this horrible emotional loop, this mental construct that we have stuck in our minds about the way the world is. And it just keeps playing over and over again. And so no matter what happens, if like you find a $5 bill, it's like you're going to look on the, dark side of it. Maybe that wasn't the best example. But whatever happens, the person tends to boil it back down to, oh, they hate me because I'm a man. Let's go ahead and look at it from a MGTOW point of view. What is the proper amount of suspicion and distrust of women to have in this day and age. And it's offset, isn't it, by the fantasy image, the romantic Disney princess image of what women in a relationship is, and how a man needs to be this Prince Charming character and this nest builder and provider, and then he'll have his little princess, and of course that turns sour on both sides, right? And it's a raw deal for the man initially. Many of the fundamental aspects of patriarchy are completely destructive to men. And at least with feminism, men are finding freedom, and they are having to find their own way. They're having to find their own purpose in life. And I know a lot of you are really struggling with this. And the reason is because you were raised to be servants to women, to be servants to a gynocentric state that doesn't care about you at all. And as your ability to be this servant that they like, has dropped off with age and with wisdom, it's become more and more hostile towards you. And a lot of the feelings that are internalized within the man are there because society put them there, and it's like the man feels inadequate because he doesn't have a brand new car, because he can't be the best servant, the most attractive servant to a woman or to others, when it was never in his interest to be that servant to others. Well, there's another question right there, isn't it? So the young man is trying to be a servant. He is trying to please those around him, to get along and to get the rewards and the benefits of being a member of the group. Is that wrong? No, it's not wrong. That is how you would get by and survive. But the young man, the child, is compromising its values, or possibly compromising its values, depending on the quality of the people that they're having to interact with. And, there's the thing. So how do you get rid of this fear, this doubt, this conflict, this anxiety that destroys people? It destroys their health. It destroys, their enjoyment of life. How do you get rid of it? Since some of it is, you're supposed to have it. You're supposed to be cautious of dangerous situations. You recognize the source of it. I mean, I don't have all the answers, of course, but you recognize the source of it. You recognize the internal pattern that's going on within you. There are ideas that you formed about the way the world is, because you were being cautious, because you had to protect yourself. All women are hypergamous. That's my view. So now you're interacting with the world. You want to take care of yourself. You want to be happy. You want to be strong, healthy, independent. You want to enjoy your freedom. You want to enjoy your life. It's the only one you get. But everybody around you is acting like you should be a servant, like you should hold open the door, like you should sacrifice. Hey, you're stronger. Hey, you have more, so you should give more. And you're just watching a bunch of people around you doing less and less and less and finding more and more fault with you. So what's the source, of all this doubt and conflict and frustration within the individual? Well, consider that that's his circumstance. His circumstance is that naturally he wants to take care of himself and do right by himself, to be a strong, independent, healthy person. But he exists in a system that wants to exploit him and use him and shame him so that it can manipulate him. And most of us, in order to get along, many of us, in order to get along in that system, we give up that bit of self where we're trying to protect ourselves, build ourselves up. The normal, healthy way that an individual and that any life form needs to be. You need to motivated self-interest. You're going to move towards the things that are good for you. You're going to move away from the things that are bad for you. Now, you're in a culture, you're in a society where they tell you, oh no, you've got to hold the door open. You've got to pay more taxes for a bunch of people who think you're garbage, okay? And many of us believe it. We take it in. We say, yeah, that's what we got to do because we're stronger, we're the men. And we believe it. So I think if you can recognize that there's this conflict between the interests of the individual and the interests of the people that are around him and in the group, and then the psychological defensive mechanisms that a child has to employ in order to be part of the group and to still maintain some of their own identity. I think if you can recognize that conflict as the source, the shame of you being for you, of you not being a servant for someone else, and then you being held to account for how you didn't measure up in giving her enough money. If you can recognize that you yourself are putting yourself through this, that these are the ideas that are, that are in your head that are at conflict within your natural interests, which is taking care of yourself, being honest with yourself, being truthful with yourself, giving yourself a break once in a while, holding yourself, to a personal standard, not trying to please others, not being a servant, but being true to yourself. You live in a system that requires you to not do that shames you for doing that. And to get along in that system, the man ends up neglecting himself, turning away from himself, and turning towards the system. And it gets worse and worse and worse. The system abuses the hell out of him. His health goes down the drain. His self-worth goes down the drain. He starts to take drugs. He starts to drink. He starts to destroy himself. He starts to become violent. All kinds of problems start to develop because of this conflict. Or this is one of the sources of these frustrations. So recognize the source of the conflict. Recognize that it's internal armoring, that the young man, that the person uses, this applies to all people, that the person uses to protect themselves and defend themselves from a hostile world, And you're still in that hostile world, but you're older now, you're stronger. Reminds me of the story of the baby elephant. You take the baby elephant and you put a chain bracelet around its ankle, and you put a chain and you put a stake in the ground and you hold it, and it can't get away, and it's not strong enough. But then the elephant gets older and it gets bigger and it gets stronger, but the same chain holds the elephant there, and it could just break it by just moving its leg, right? But it doesn't know that. It doesn't remember that. It thinks it's still that little elephant. So just remember that, MGTOW. You are no longer that little elephant. You're no longer that young man who doesn't understand what's going on around him. The conflict is within you, and it's supposed to be there because, there's this conflict between your interests and the people around you and the world around you, and much of it has been internalized. So it's not easy to go in there, and to switch your motivations around, but I think it's something that you need to do. Kind of like change that wiring up a little bit, or, put some new software in there. It's not the hardware. The hardware is okay, right? Don't worry about it. Just be true to yourself, get yourself healthy, look after yourself. The hardware is okay. And, we can update the software. So go ahead and like, share, comment, subscribe. And don't forget, click on my PayPal link. Get yourself a Howard Dare video. It'll be one of the greatest things you've ever done, and I would really appreciate it. So join me again, Howard Dare, as I plan to have more content for you. Thank you, MGTOW.